Hi, I'm Rajeev Goel, co-founder and CEO of PubMatic, and I'm excited to be here with Brian O'Kelly, co-founder and CEO of Scope3. And we're here today to talk about digital advertising, the rise of agentic platforms, and what that means for our future. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
So it's great to have you here. You and I were founding members of OpenRTB way back in the day, 2009, 2010, and of course that went on to become the foundation for programmatic advertising as it exists today. Now we're working together on what comes next, which is the Ad Context Protocol or AdCP. So let's start there. What is AdCP and why do you think we need it now?
Yeah, well, the idea that AI agents can make the advertising industry much more efficient and effective is pretty obvious. We all see it every day in our everyday lives, that if you go into ChatGPT or Claude and ask it to do something, it is incredibly resourceful at going out to different places on the internet, figuring out how to do those tasks, and then doing them for us. And so AdCP is just a advertising version of that, where we are setting up some standard protocols where any ad monetization publishing platform can say, hey, I'm open for business. If you're interested in buying ads from me, just ask, and I'll tell you what kind of ads you can buy. And we're basically letting the AI agents take away all the busy work and all the complexity of what we've been doing in programmatic for such a long time.
I think it's really critical because typically when we look at any technological innovation, people use new technology to solve old problems as opposed to solving new problems. But I think what we're talking about here with AdCP is creating an entirely new workflows, agentic workflows that I think have been theorized for quite some time, but are not yet the reality. But this is really, I think, foundational technology to enable that.
Yeah. And when I talk to agencies, they've been talking about AI for years. And what they've focused on is the life cycle of an advertising campaign from the perspective of the agency. It's understand the brief, make a plan, build an audience, activate, report, measure. And they have all of that figured out except activate. And so we said, well, you've got these workflows, but the only one where you actually transact and buy something is the one that's too complicated to be done by agents. How do we make that something that is as easy to understand as brief, plan, audience, that's it.
Let's drill into that for a second. So one of the things that's critical about AdCP is that it activates on the sell side, closest to the consumer, closest to the publisher. Why is that positioning important?
Well, for the first off, we've seen that if you can put all of the data about the consumer, all of the knowledge about the ad placements, and having full visibility into what advertisers want to achieve, they can use AI to do way more than anybody's ever seen in driving results for advertisers, protecting consumer experience, and making tons of money. And so I am not shy about copying what clearly looks like the most effective advertising model in the world. So if we said, okay, we're going to build a model where the publisher knows nothing about what the advertiser is trying to accomplish, you'd say, well, then you're basically taking away the ability of the publisher to participate. And you're taking away the ability of the supply side to actually do what they probably have more capacity to do than the buyers. And if you say to a buyer like Coca-Cola, what is this one impression worth? That's not a knowable thing. But they can value a segment, a cohort. They can understand market trends incredibly well, and they really do know their audience. So why not take what they know so well, which is their objective and their audience and everything they're trying to accomplish, and ask for help from the sell side? And so that's the basic idea of bringing the locus of transaction or decision to where we have the most information and can really leverage it to help the advertiser achieve their goal.
So we've seen, I think, a lot more spend flowing from media buyers into publishers with the advent of sell-side targeting and curation. How do you think AdCP can, enhance that and take it to the next level?
Well, one of the problems with programmatic is even if we say we're bringing the decision closer to the publisher, there is still a DSP that's making the actual bidding decision. And so even if we knew perfectly that this is the exact impression that we need to show this consumer to drive an outcome, we still have to hope that the DSP makes the right decision. And so that really is where the one layer of decisioning makes a lot more sense than having a we decide and hope you get it right.
So AI is often discussed as a tool to improve workflow and processes, making things faster, more efficient. But I think AdCP is much greater than that, as we've been talking about. It feels like it's really a rewrite of the foundational building blocks of programmatic advertising.
It's a reimagination. We give so much more power to everyone in the transaction, everyone in the process, to bring value to the table. So I think that's more than the rewrite. It's a sequel.
PubMatic has spent years building out AI capabilities within our owned and operated infrastructure. In fact, we very recently announced a collaboration with NVIDIA where we're doing a variety of things with them, but using their GPUs for faster processing of data, for inferencing, which leads to better traffic shaping. As you think about and examine the companies in the AdCP consortium, what does that foundation in terms of AI and in terms of technology infrastructure mean for this transformation?
Yeah, you also recently announced some MCP tools, Model Context Protocol, which is basically the API layer for AI. And to me, that's what I loved about the PubMatic MCP tools was they weren't just a copy and paste of traditional APIs. It wasn't like make a deal, delete a deal. It was let's troubleshoot. And to me, that's starting to really move up the stack, the complexity and intellectual stack toward how do we help a human use an agent to solve a complicated problem that might need to go out to multiple systems. So that way of agentic thinking is very difficult for a lot of people and companies, especially those that come from legacy software backgrounds. And so I think it's actually the mindset, and then you have the technology chops on top of NVIDIA, on top of all the years you've spent building complex distributed real-time systems. Like you walk into this with a huge advantage and a massive network of publishers and relationships and people. Like everything you need is right here to be a leader in commercial outcomes for a new era.
I'm glad you brought up that MCP specification, and our goal with that really was to spark a conversation. We weren't trying to say, hey, we know everything about how this new AI era should operate, but it was let's put a stake in the ground and see what others think, and we're really inviting participation. And I think we expected that there would be a lot of dialogue, but I would say we've been very pleasantly overwhelmed and surprised at how much interest there is, which tells us that in the OpenRTB protocol, there's, I think, a lot of companies that are chafing behind those limitations, which means there's a step function opportunity to improve things. So let's get one level more granular and make this concrete. So Scope3 has built brand agents that will connect with agents on the PubMatic side. Walk us through an actual workflow. Like how do these agents work together? How are they using AdCP to communicate? And what can a marketer accomplish that they can't accomplish today?
The fundamental idea is still, I've got some money, I've got some creative, I need to get consumer outcomes. And so the way the protocol works is we start by basically broadcasting to all of the sales agents or monetization agents. Say, I got this Nike campaign, they're sponsoring the Berlin Marathon. I really want to find global runners who would be excited to follow the action. But fundamentally, they don't necessarily know every single website in every single market. And so the idea is that we would ask the PubMatic agent, what do you got? And if you think about all the years you've been doing this and all the expertise and all those audiences and all this amazing network of publishers, you'd then go out and surface some ideas, some products, and we just run it on an AI engine that is constantly tweaking and adjusting. And one of the cool things about it is we can provide feedback to all of our partners to say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't driving outcomes. What it does is it reverses the race to the bottom of programmatic. Because if you're selling on volume, you just want to sell as much as you can. But if you're getting graded, you want to have high grades because that means you'll get more spend. And so we can actually hold the industry accountable that way. But it also means that if you're PubMatic, you can unlock all of these capabilities. Because I'm not coming in and saying, I want this exact segment from this exact provider. I'm saying, make my campaign work. I think the idea is pulling the sell side up the stack to be accountable for outcomes. You become much more like Meta.
Yeah.
You are going to be the Meta of the open internet.
So for marketers and agencies that are watching, what are the very specific first steps that they can take to start experimenting with agentic buying? What does getting started look like?
It's demystifying the idea of an agent. It sounds kind of scary to say, well, wow, an agent's going to do my buying. I would recommend starting really simple, which is let me go into, you can try Scope3, you can sign up for free, take a brief and just paste it into the screen and say, what would you do with this brief? It will analyze the brief and say, hey, here's a few different ways you could try it. You could run that through the AdCP protocol. You'll find it's really intuitive. It's not some mystical, crazy black box.
So let's talk about the step after that. So we've just launched AdCP on October 15th. How soon are we ready to actually execute campaigns at scale?
Our goal is to, by November 1st, be running some campaigns agentically, and then by January 1st, to be able to run on the full scale of what we think of today as the open internet, and to start to see some of the non-open properties or platforms be available. And that's even using a publisher like a Yahoo. You can't buy all of Yahoo programmatically. You can't buy all of New York Times programmatically.
Right.
There's a lot of inventory, even on the best sites, that is not available to programmatic buyers. And so if we can find ways to help them bring more of their audience, more of their custom ad units, more of their special sauce into an automated environment, we all unlock a ton of value. So I think that's what we get to in Q1.
And let's talk a little bit about the change management aspect of this, right? Because I think AI inevitably runs into the human factor, right? Which is humans love to keep doing what they've been doing. So how do you think about what kind of organizational or people changes need to happen to make this great new future the reality?
I'll give you a very concrete example, which is we've been working on brand safety and brand standards for AI agents. And we've been doing this through keyword lists for the past 15 years. You know, if you say, I want to avoid natural disasters, you have to make a list of every type of natural disaster. Typhoon, cyclone, hurricane, flood, whatever they are. And the agentic version of that is, please don't put my ads on content about natural disasters. That's it, you're done. And so it actually takes the human back, because we're terrible as creatures at managing huge long lists of things. And the stuff we see on these keyword lists is crazy. I mean, if you're State Farm and you're advertising on college football, but you block hurricane, that's a football team. Cyclone?
Right.
It's a football team,
yeah.
Right? And so you start going down the list of football team names, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of natural disaster teams that you can never advertise on. AI doesn't make that mistake. And so that's sort of a good example for a lot of agentic, where it takes the acronyms and it takes a lot of this like really fine-grained stuff that we find ourselves doing, like, making deal groups or all this stuff. It's like, find me really good inventory for my audience. And then once you find it, buy more of it. That's it. And it's not taking a human out of the loop. It's actually making humans creative. It lets us do what we're really good at, which is symbolic reasoning about ideas. You
and I both spent, I think, the greater part of our careers championing open internet infrastructure. One thing I appreciate about AdCP is it's truly a consortium. There's no, it's not one company's proprietary solution. Why was that important this time, and what do we learn in terms of how the industry evolved after OpenRTB that's different?
Yeah, I learned a lot from OpenRTB, Prebid, and Ads.txt, which I think are the three standards that programmatic created that worked broadly. Prebid, we saw within 2 or 3 years, almost every single website in the world was running Prebid code.
Right, it's pretty amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
and it became a consortium of people running competitive companies. I mean, we did not like each other as competitors, but we saw Google and GAM as a threat. And so we kind of came together and said, this is a better way to advertise. And it worked. And in fact, Google had to be anti-competitive to compete with a consortium. And so my belief is actually that the future of the internet depends on us solving the real problems, which is how do we make advertising as effective outside walled gardens as it is on walled gardens?
Inside of them, yeah.
That is where we unlock tens or hundreds of billions of dollars of value, not just for ourselves, but for publishers, for consumers, for creators, for small businesses. Like, this is the future of the world that we're talking about. It cannot be controlled by OpenAI or whoever the next major platform is. So to me, that's, okay, let's get everybody in the room. Let's make sure this works for audio and out of home. Let's make sure it works for AI chat experiences. Let's think about how to make something that is so powerful that it actually works. And that to me is more motivating than, being Brian's agentic platform. And I do hope that Scope3's platform is very successful, but I don't want to be the only platform.
Sure, yeah.
Because competition creates categories, it creates markets, and it creates innovation. If you stop having legitimate competition, you end up
stasis,
stuck.
Yeah.
And we can't afford that.
Well, I do think the big unlock here is bringing performance advertising into the open internet and really giving the walled gardens a run for their money, right? I mean, they have incredible scale, but they don't have a birthright to that scale. I think they've achieved what they've achieved because of the performance they're able to drive. And if we can bring that into the open internet, I think that will bring so much more investment into content creation that consumers really appreciate and love.
And that also means that as a business, you can start selling performance in ways you can't today.
Yeah.
So I want to buy performance from you, and you want to sell performance to me because it's a much more effective way to align incentives.
So let's look into the future a couple of years, right? 2-3 years from now. What do you think success looks like? Both for the AdCP protocol, but I would say for the advertising industry more fundamentally.
I think that the sort of navel gazing of trying to figure out these protocols. I mean, the funny thing about AdCP is it's really simple. Like, you go to the website, you're like, there's like 6 things.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is not a hard problem. The details are complex in certain ways, but I want to talk about how do we unlock these amazing creative opportunities. I want to talk about how we make chat experiences on a global basis, compatible with advertising. I want to think about how we help every person who wants the power of AI to be able to afford it without a $200 a month subscription, which is completely impossible for the vast majority of the world.
Totally.
Like, these are the conversations. I want to talk about small business owners who are able to find customers because they were able to break down the barriers. Right now, they can't even afford the time investment to understand the number 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms. If we could say it's as easy to buy Reddit, Pinterest, Snap, New York Times, whatever, as it is to buy Meta, what if AdCP as an ecosystem was the number 3 ad platform? That's what I think we should aspire to be, is number 3, maybe number 4. If that's the case, then the world changes. And we're going to create an immense amount of value for every part of the global economy.
I love that. Let's help our audience understand you a little bit better. If the advertising industry didn't exist, what do you think your career would be in? It's a tough one for you, given how many companies you've started in the industry.
Yeah, it's like my only talent is I love complex ecosystems. So after we sold AppNexus, I went and built a commodities platform. I actually built an ad server for metal. Our platform basically was tracking and managing 25% of the copper coming into the US. And it's a very, very complex global supply chain. We did this right as COVID hit. So you're seeing all this insanity around how the global supply chain was just blown up.
I remember those days, yes.
It was wild.
Yeah.
And so we had a front row seat to that. And so I would find a market like that where there's the same level of complexity, where you could use algorithms and technology and relationships and ecosystems to actually make the world better. And I'd love to do something in the civic sector. I think there's a lot of things in our world where, we're focused on commercial outcomes, but if we focus on human outcomes, what could we do with all the incredible expertise we have to make the lived world better for everybody?
All right, and what's your favorite streaming show in the last 12 to 18 months? What would you recommend to the audience?
Oh, wow.
Have you been watching any TV? Maybe you haven't been. Hard at work.
I am really bad at watching TV shows because I can't stop. And show I think I watched The Lincoln Lawyer. I read the books. I've read every book that, he's ever written. Michael Connelly, he's great. Or Ted Lasso. That's my favorite show. I think that's hilarious.
Well, Brian, thanks for the conversation. For everyone that's watching, you can learn more at adcontextprotocol.org. Join the community and start exploring what's possible. It's an exciting time for the industry, and thank you, Brian, for sitting down and taking us all through it.
Thanks for having me.